Hey, it's me, Pete, and this is episode 308 of Stand Up with Pete Dominic Daily. Joining me today, bioethicist from NYU, Dr. Arthur Caplan, and from Redholtz Wealth Management, Barry Ritholtz. I am just me. It's just me, Pete Dominic, in my shed, in my backyard. Time to stand up right now. Stand up. Well, hello there, my friend. Thank you very much for checking out the podcast today and every day. Thank you for supporting it with a paid subscription if you can, or if you already do. And many of you editing your subscription up. Really appreciate that very, very much. I hope that you're hanging in there, doing okay. Congratulations to a longtime listener turned friend who just found out that his wife is pregnant and only told me. He knows who he is. Congratulations, buddy. Very excited for you guys. We can see daylight, can't we? Here in this first 10 days of March, more and more people getting vaccinated every single day. The House passing via Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package. A lot to say about that. Here at the top of the show, it is a big effing deal, as he once said to his president that he was VP for, of course, President Obama, when he passed Obamacare and signed that into law. Also, Joe Biden ordered an additional 100 million doses of the single-dose Johnson & Johnson. The Senate confirmed Merrick Garland to be the next U.S. Attorney General, which is a very big deal, and means that when people see Merrick Garland in public, they won't apologize for the way he was treated by Mitch McConnell, now that he is the Attorney General and can actually arrest them if he wanted to. I suppose he wouldn't arrest them if they did that. But before I get too into the news here in the opening news segment, which you can hear each and every day on this podcast, a very excellent recap of everything that happened in the last 24 hours. Just want to say I'm not going to be able to hang out tonight. For those of you who are paid subscribers and join and hang out with us at the happy hour hanging on Thursday nights, I'm going to be in the car. I didn't realize that, but I'm not going to be able to make it because I'm driving 4 hours after the girls get out of school, and it's just going to be too tight. Taking the girls to Syracuse to see my vaccinated elders, Mom, Pa, Chuck, and Mary. Very excited. So I'm going to have to postpone our hangout this week. I'm very sorry about that. Maybe I'll be able to do something Friday or Saturday night, and I'll spontaneously announce it. So keep an eye on your email if that's something that you're interested in doing. Very sorry, again, for those of you that look so forward to it, because I do as well, but it's going to be hard to do from the car. And I don't think that'll be very safe. Anyway, I have a lot to say here, or play here at the top of the program. Time for the last 24. And I think we've got to start in Washington, where the U.S. House of Representatives passed President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. Here is CNBC.
Well, it appears that the House has just passed President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. The final vote tally is somewhere around 220 to 211, with only one Democrat voting against it. No Republicans voted for it. The bill is now headed to the president's desk for his signature, and the White House says that that will happen on Friday. Well, Democrats say that the American Rescue Plan provides broad relief that they hope will stimulate the economy after a year of pandemic-induced pain. Now, some of the specific sectors getting dedicated funding include $28.6 billion for the restaurant industry. Airlines get another $15 billion. There's $7.25 billion to expand the payroll protection program, $1.7 billion for Amtrak, and easier rules for the live entertainment venues to access their aid. Now, the business community has been largely behind this package. There was some pushback around the size of some of the direct benefits to individuals. But guys, overall, corporate America has argued that the money for public health and small businesses has made it essential that this bill become law.
There you go. How about that? And when will the president sign this bill? Here is his spokeswoman, Jen Psaki.
With today's expected passage of the rescue plan, I can announce that the president will sign the bill at the White House on Friday afternoon.
And Joe Biden, to his credit, tweeted simply, "Help is here." Not everybody loved this bill. Here is Kevin McCarthy, who is one of the leaders of the House insurrection and anti-democracy caucus, as I'll call it, before the bill passed on the House floor.
So let's be clear. This isn't a rescue bill. It isn't a relief bill. It's a laundry list of left-wing priorities that predate the pandemic. and do not meet the needs of the American families. No wonder even House Democrats have said they are embarrassed by what is in it. And just this week, one of their own members said there is no question there's some waste in there.
Oh, well, Kevin McCarthy, you really got us. Very strong argument. Coming from a man just built of a wall of integrity and honesty and patriotism. Really, we believe everything that you're saying, sir. Also on the House floor, a very ugly moment that I was, when I saw this, I don't know, I guess I saw it on Twitter. I was so triggered. I was so upset that I had to like go outside and take a breath of fresh air and calm myself down. But Congressman Glenn Grothman brought up Black Lives Matter on the House floor in the debate over the COVID bill. And he said, quote, "I know it's a group that doesn't like the old-fashioned family." And wait till you hear Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett rip into him after. But you got to hear this guy.
A marriage penalty in it. I bring it up because I know the strength that Black Lives Matter had in this last election. I know it's a group that it doesn't like the old-fashioned family. Disturbed that we have another program here in which we're increasing the marriage penalty.
It is a group that doesn't like the old-fashioned family. That's a guy named Glenn Grothman, the representative from Wisconsin's 6th district. Of course, he's a Republican. It's the Oshkosh Sheboygan Fond du Lac Lake. How is it pronounced in Wisconsin? I don't know, but you people should be ashamed of your congressman, Glenn Grothman, right there. But Stacey Plaskett, who you may know as one of the impeachment managers, who is a black congresswoman representing the Virgin Islands. Well, she's not actually technically a congresswoman because it's the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She went up and went right after Glenn Grothman for his horrific, weird, awful comments about Black Lives Matter not supporting traditional families. Here now is that.
Mr. Speaker, and I hope my colleague from Wisconsin will not leave at this time as he's talked about Black Lives Matter. How dare you say that Black Lives Matter, Black people do not understand old-fashioned families. Despite some of the issues, some of the things that you have put forward that I've heard out of your mouth in the Oversight Committee, in your own district, we have been able to keep our families alive for over 400 years, and the assault on our families to not have Black lives or not even have Black families. How dare you say that we are not interested in families in the Black community? That is outrageous. That should be stricken down. I was going to talk about the American Rescue Plan. We know that this is going to provide relief to not only Black lives, Black Americans, but all Americans, that we are interested in children and in their welfare. And at this time, I yield back.
All right, applause in the well of the House for Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, suffering no fools whatsoever. Go straight at Glenn Grothman. More of that, please. Woman is a superstar. And let's hear from another black congressman. Congressman Jamal Bowman had a lot to say on the House floor as well. And I thought this was really good. I wanted to share it with you as well. Here it is.
We live in a country where CEOs can make as much as 320 times what their workers make. We live in a country where 1%, the top 1% economically controls more wealth than the bottom 90% of our country. We live in a country where 3 individuals own more wealth than the bottom 50% of our nation. In a democracy with a constitution such as ours, this economic inequality cannot stand. The PRO Act seeks to empower workers who build this country with their blood, sweat, and tears, who work overtime and extra time and weekends and do not take a vacation so that our economy can thrive. The PRO Act gives workers the opportunity to unionize and organize without being oppressed within the plantation capitalist system. I rise to ask bipartisan support of this important legislation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Wow, the plantation capitalist system. That's the kind of rhetoric you would only hear in the furthest corners of left-wing philosophers and activists and commentators, whatever there used to be. But now it's on the House floor. I like it. And Heather McGhee, who I love, tweeted about that. She wrote, Congressman Bowman knows that racism is the sharpest tool against labor solidarity, and that if we don't strengthen the right to organize, we'll still be stuck in a system that paid its first essential workers $0 in the lash. Pass the PRO Act. Hashtag solidarity dividend. I love it. Heather McGhee, great tweet right there. And here on Joy Reid's show on MSNBC last night, the last 24, we get to hear from one of my favorite senators, Democrat Sherrod Brown of Ohio, who said today was the best day of his career because we did so many things. It's got so many things in there, the rescue bill, that'll make the country better. Listen.
Evening, the whole night, we were voting hour after hour after hour all night. And I was almost giddy, if I could use that term, sitting next to Bob Casey. We were just in anticipation of what we were about to do. So when I left the building to ride home with young man Andy driving back to Ohio, which I do every week, I said to a reporter on the way out, this is the best day of my career. Because we did so many things. I mean, I think every person in the country is watching the Joy Reid show and listen to you delineate all the things that are in this bill. That's why it's bipartisan. It's 60-70% of the public likes this bill because it's got so many things in there that will make the country better. It's really simple and it's really the right thing. And I would bet almost every Democrat in the House and Senate will say it was close to the best day in their career.
Wow, how about that? Sherrod Brown, at Sen Sherrod Brown on Twitter, by the way. You're hearing Democrats say that the bill is bipartisan. It was not. That's just their spin because the vast majority of Republicans, rather Americans, including Republicans, support the rescue bill, but not in Congress. It got 0 votes in both the House and the Senate. And I thought this was an interesting headline. As a result of the COVID relief bill being passed, 13,000 airline workers' jobs have been saved before the bill was even signed into law. American Airlines announced the cancellation of 13,000 layoff warnings crediting the just passed COVID relief bill. That's not the kind of action that you see from the private sector so quickly and so overtly. And that's a big deal. American Airlines telling 13,000 workers who received notices of April 1st furloughs, you can tear them up. Thank you, Joe Biden and Democrats. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out because even Republicans are pretty pissed off and Trump loyalists as well. I mean, at least according to this CNN segment where Republican voters were none too happy that Republican members refuse to support the stimulus that they need. Here is CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich.
We're definitely feeling the crunch like most people.
Alexo Bell is a Donald Trump loyalist, but he's willing to put party affiliation aside to support President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill.
Whether it be Biden or Trump, I think the country needs that stimulus.
He's not alone. 61% of Americans support it, one of the largest aid packages in history. Bell's work as a promoter dried up during the pandemic.
I'm mostly a stay-at-home dad right now. I'm watching my little guys, and my wife is the primary breadwinner right now.
Just 26% of Republicans support the overall bill, according to a CNN poll, but a majority approve of the family tax credits. One of those, an extra $1,000 per child for families who qualify.
That's significant. You have 2 kids. That's an extra $2,000.
It is, and I think that people that have more than 2 children are even be getting that much more of a break.
In the suburbs outside of Philadelphia, Frank Heron says his restaurant survived because of 2 PPP loans. This bill calls for $7 billion in additional PPP money and $25 billion in grants for restaurants and bars.
It actually gave us a lot of confidence that we would be able to make it through.
Heron voted for Trump twice and says while this bill is needed, he's concerned the massive price tag could boost inflation.
I think it's very scary, and the value of our money is going to decline significantly because of this.
Barbara Jankowski was a Republican for 40 years, but this past November, disappointed with Trump and the GOP, she voted for Biden and changed her party registration. She's all in on the stimulus bill.
I think it's great because people are hurting.
She and her husband, both retired, say the previous $600 stimulus checks did little to help with bills. This time, she says, they can save some of their $1,400 checks.
We also keep that money in case our children need help. If they would run into problems, that stimulus money would go to them.
And here's my favorite part where she reacts to the fact that no Republicans voted for the bill.
Shame on them.
Oh, and while we're shaming people, here is a human piece of shit, terrible person who makes money being a horrible, cruel, nasty, not even good at it, smart, but he's done well, Sean Hannity.
Clyburn was on with Neil Cavuto yesterday and actually suggested, well, he may have an issue with stuttering. The only problem is he didn't have it in 2016 or 2012. Yeah. And when did this problem start to emerge? So I don't like the fact Clyburn.
What an unbelievable asshole he is. Man, would I love to see him in the street and say a lot of words right to his face for as long as I could before security picked me up by my own wedgie. I'm sure they're assholes too. All right, that's all I've got for you on today's Last 24. It's now time to get to a news dump, but I have to play these two jingles that Joe Liotta sent me because they're absolutely terrible, and I think Joe knows it. And first of all, the audio quality of the sound of the music here is bad. And I want to make fun of longtime subscriber and a guy who I've become really good friends with, Joe Liotta, who I love that he sent these to me.
Some people wake up and say a string of Hail Marys. I'd rather listen to Stand Up Daily.
It doesn't even rhyme, Joe. I love that you wake up and listen to Stand Up Daily, but I mean, all right, there's number one. This is Joe Liotta in Connecticut. I love Joe. Here's the other one. All right, let me see.
Here is Pete coming from the shed. Hair on his chin, but not on his head.
I mean, where are you getting the music, Joe? I mean, those are absolutely terrible. Keep them coming. It really made me laugh how little effort you seem to put into them, but I really love that you thought about it, Joe. All right, it's time for the news dump. It's not COVID, it's not politics. It's rapid-fire news headlines, the news dump. Start with some tech and social media news. Bloomberg is reporting that Parler, the controversial conservative social media app, was denied re-entry to Apple's App Store recently after it was kicked off the platform in the wake of the January 6th Capitol riot. On Wednesday, Parler cut its 3 remaining Apple developers, according to a person familiar with the matter. So that's awesome. Hopefully that Parler does not return to the App Store. And speaking of tech news, apparently Amazon Alexa can now maybe monitor your heartbeat without even touching you using invisible sound waves. That's right. Your smart speaker can one day monitor your heartbeat as you go about daily business at home. You can impress me when the smart speaker system can manipulate me physically, okay? That's what I'm looking for. Arousal. U.S. scientists have been working on a smart speaker system that could give your Amazon Alexa or Google Home the ability to spot irregular heartbeats. Okay, so it just saves my life. It doesn't get me off. I'll buy it either way. Thank you. A conservative, controversial polemicist, Milo Yiannopoulos, says he's not gay anymore. And I don't believe it, and I don't care, and that dude is the worst. Just the worst. Stocks have hit another high, even though when he was still president, Donald Trump said that if you elected Joe Biden, the stock market would crash. He said it over and over and over. Well, they've hit another high. You know, I don't think the stock market really cares who's president. That's what I've decided. Colorado could see one of the biggest snowstorms since 1885. That is a story that's developing. I'm sure we know more by the time you're listening to this podcast. But good for you, Colorado. Take a little more snow in mid-March or early March. I love it. Stay safe. Get some powder. LeBron James being urged to rethink his thoughts on private vaccine stance. I talk about that with Dr. Arthur Caplan today. A group of scientists has found warming of worldwide oceans in the era of climate change means that baby sharks are at a risk of being born smaller and without the energy that they need to survive, according to the Associated Press. Scientists who conducted the work in connection with the New England Aquarium studied epaulet sharks, which live off Australia and New Guinea. They found the warmer conditions sped up the sharks' growing process, and that meant they hatched from eggs earlier and were born exhausted. Sounds like how I feel about the constant drip, drip, drip of terrifying news regarding the climate crisis. But always want to mention these stories in the news dump and anywhere else. And finally, if you hate losing an hour of sleep each spring owing to daylight saving time, USA Today has some good news and the bad news. The bad news is that most Americans are still going to have to move clocks forward 1 hour at 2 a.m. on Sunday. But the good news is that the momentum for ending the time change is stronger now than ever before. 15 states, Arkansas, California, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Louisiana, Maine, Ohio, Oregon, South Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming have enacted legislation to make daylight saving time a permanent practice rather than one observed only from March to November. That would mean no more switching of the clocks twice a year, which messes with our circadian rhythms and reportedly leads to an increase in fatal auto accidents. Yet none of the aforementioned states can have their way without federal intervention. So, want to read more? Go to the USA Today. And that is today's news dump. All right. I usually have two guests on the show, and today is no exception. Two very smart experts joining me today. We start with probably one of the most respected bioethicists in all the nation. He is now at NYU's Langone Health, and he is a professor of bioethics, and he's the author, editor of 35 books, over 725 papers in peer-reviewed journals, served on a number of national and international committees, including as the chair of the National Cancer Institute, Biobanking Ethics Working Group, and so many other things that I don't understand. He's such a thoughtful and important guy. I always love talking to Dr. Arthur Caplan, who I've gotten to know well and respect so much, and I'm very happy to have him join the show today. Follow him on Twitter at Arthur Caplan. Here's my latest conversation with Dr. Arthur Caplan about vaccines and COVID and much, much more. Okay, so I've got Dr. Caplan now, and great to have you back, Art. Thank you for joining me. We got to start with, I know you're a sports fan. You're especially an NBA fan. Yeah. And help me understand what's going on with LeBron James and getting vaccinated, because you're an NBA fan and a bioethicist, the perfect guy to ask this question to. What's happening?
And it's almost, as they used to say, the empty set. Who the heck is a bioethics person and a sports fan? There's none of them. It's like a unicorn. Anyway.
Well, here you are.
So, look, the NBA has been pushing safety, pushing the fact that they're going to come back with testing and quarantine, and they isolate teams at this. They just had their All-Star game. Two of the players turned out to have been exposed to COVID from the Philadelphia team because their barber turned out to be positive. They wouldn't let them play, shut them down. The commissioner's been adamant that he wants the players to be supportive of whatever it takes to beat back COVID. You know, it's partly a business decision. They want to get fans back. They want to play. Well, LeBron, out of the blue, when asked at this All-Star break, said, I don't know about vaccination. It's a personal issue. I'm going to keep that between me and my family.
What?
Now, that's the most visible player in the NBA. It's a person that I would venture to say has more influence over people's behavior than, let's just pull somebody out of the air. I don't know, Andrew Cuomo, Gavin Newsom, Donald Trump. I mean, people pay attention to this guy. And the fact that he took, at best, a lukewarm or wishy-washy attitude toward vaccination, I found it really troubling.
Well, you understand as well as anybody, I suppose, outside the people running these campaigns, how celebrities are invited and often incorporated into public health campaigns, from anything less controversial historically, like the environment, to more controversial things like this. But this is what you do. This is what public health campaigns do. They find the people that you trust, And obviously there's suspicion in the black community because they've historically been tested upon like animals. And so you incorporate that person. LeBron James, the perfect spokesman for so many reasons. And he's dropping the ball, so to speak.
He dropped the ball. In my view, this was the absolute time to say, vaccination is important. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get my family vaccinated. You should do it. We didn't go there. I don't know why he hesitated. He's a guy who's sophisticated. He understands COVID. He knows. He was somebody who said, I'm not sure we should even play this all-star game, by the way, and that we shouldn't all schlep down to Atlanta to play what, in essence, Pete, is a meaningless game. It's just an exhibition.
Right.
Many would say it's an excuse for parties, and many might also point out that the entire city engaged in behavior that was absolutely guaranteed to be a super spreader if these strains are nasty. But yeah, I really think he
has a chance to change that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he can still make a whole.
He can still step up.
Yeah. And we'll see. I think there should be pressure upon him to do so.
And by the way, and we were saying, politicians, that's why I was mumbling about Cuomo and Newsom and so on. You remember Mike Pence got vaccinated and he said, I'm going to do it because I want to build public trust. When I got up off the floor from laughter, I mean, partly it's like, trust politicians? Okay. Yeah. Well, then he vaccinates his wife, vaccinates his kids, vaccinates his staff. What the heck does that have to do with trust building? So some of the people that were supposed to step forward, if you will, were clearly just getting to the head of the line.
The other thing, and we can just dispense of this very quickly, but President Trump, we found out that Trump and the First Lady, got vaccinated while he was still in the White House.
Secretly. Good job. Good job, Donald. Good job.
So I mean, the larger question, but let me just not skip over the fact that I said, the historical suspicion amongst black Americans about vaccinations and medicine in general. But I've been hearing from a lot of black folks saying, hey, take it down a notch, buddy. White people are just as much a conspiracy and more of them even about these vaccinations. And so where are we overall? How would you say on the anti-vax movement, which you and I have been discussing for years? But has COVID-19 and now the available vaccines made it spread, the anti-vax movement? Or do you think the fact that people are getting these vaccines and not dying is maybe combating it?
Well, the worst thing you can do if you're somebody who wants to tout an anti-vax position is to find out there isn't enough vaccine. Then people are killing themselves to get vaccines, right? They're cheating, they're lying, they're claiming they're sick when they're not, they're flying here and there. So strangely enough, shortage produces panic, and the panic has actually driven back the anti-vaccine message a little bit. I think we'll have to see when we get enough vaccine, probably in a few more months, does that reinvigorate the anti-vax movement? Nobody's paying any attention to RFK Jr. or the autism people or anything else because half the country is like, well, what do you mean I can't get it? I got to figure out a way to get it. Do you know anybody who could get it for me? So it flipped. That's what happened.
That's really fascinating to hear that that's the reason why we're not here as much, because of the shortage and the desperation. And let's move into this op-ed that you and a PhD student wrote at MedPage today, because what you just said about, the desperation, you do mention here in this piece about the scammers. Tell me about the research that was done and how it was done to learn more about this, because I'm not doing a very good job setting this up. There's some really powerful quotes and provocative quotes in this piece, including our country has not just failed to achieve equality, we don't even value it. The SARS-CoV-2 virus is teaching us a lot about ourselves, providing lessons that are very hard for this nation to swallow. Now, one of those lessons is the scammers that you were just talking about. What are we seeing?
So we reviewed basically press reports from all around the country about who's scamming their way to vaccine. Rich people basically saying, if I donate to your hospital, rich people saying, hey, you're my concierge doctor, meaning I pay you every year a big sum of money. Can you get it for me? People who are rich flying places. One of my favorites, group of people flew up to Canada and pretended to be Aboriginal or Inuit people to get vaccinated. You got to admire that one. People lying about underlying disease. I'm sick. Here's another one. Educators or teachers supposed to get vaccinated. Well, I teach yoga How about I teach aerobics? Did you mean me? Oh, okay, I'm in line too. And the scams go on and on. So one thing that tells Kyle Ferguson and I, who wrote this thing, is that America tolerates cheating and scamming in a way that tells us that we don't really value equity. We don't really take seriously equality. In fact, I'm going to go further. We don't even like to talk about class. It's a country that loves to talk about race all day long. But when you say who's more important, how come the rich are able to cheat and nobody does anything? No penalties, little bit of eyebrow raising, some snickering. A lot of people say, well, what do you expect? Well, what I expect is that they get punished.
Accountability.
That's what I expect. Doesn't happen.
It's a very provocative piece, and I couldn't agree more with you, sadly, on it.
So look, the other side of this, as we said, it tells us something also about who's important.
Right.
Pro wrestlers.
Wait, what is that? That's there's a whole list here. And the one that stood out to me was pro wrestling. Now, the question here is,
Florida.
Who really counts in society in this survey that you're looking at, this research that you did? That is, which individuals and populations are being prioritized in many city, county, and states, allocation schemes, and de facto distributions of vaccines? And then you have a list bullet pointed here. So is this what people's perceptions are about who is getting priority?
Yeah.
And pro wrestler is somewhere in the list?
Right. Florida. Good old Florida. You got that's where the pro wrestling thing is based. A lot of jobs. Put them to the front of the line. We got to keep that sports economy humming. And you'll see, if you just looked at who gets vaccinated, it's clear that there are people who are utterly ignored, prisoners, prison guards, people with disabilities who live in group homes. Nobody's got them on the list. And we're having big fights about, well, what about the board of trustees at Company X or Hospital Y? It just tells you, I'll say it again, we mouth off all day long about equity, particularly in healthcare. We like to think that everybody kind of gets treated equally for healthcare. I know that's BS. But it comes out so starkly when you just look at the distribution pattern of vaccines. So it's just sitting right there in front of us.
Yeah, I'll link to this piece, of course, in the show notes. I hope that everybody will read this. I've shared it on Twitter, of course. Dr. Caplan on Twitter as well. It asks, who is discounted in our society? And you just answered that one as well. Prisoners, most teachers, Meals on Wheels, delivery folks, airline flight attendants, are discounted. Obviously, poor minorities, not surprising there. Subway, bus, mass transit workers, and janitors. This is a fascinating and interesting list. But these are this is actual results of your survey, right?
I mean, these are the people who aren't on anybody's list.
Right.
They're people with high exposure. They're people we know die at rates that are higher than others. Nope, not there.
Let's just quickly talk about the new CDC guidelines. I just talked to a public health expert from Rutgers University who said, look, they're very conservative. They like to be careful. That seems to be a lot of what I'm hearing, but there's a lot there to talk about, and we just got a couple minutes. So what do you want to say about the new CDC guidelines? Because I'm going to see my fully vaccinated parents with my daughters this weekend.
There you go. And I think that's fine. And I just mentioned to you off air, we're going to take a trip with a bunch of vaccinated people. Right. And that means driving to a big house near the beach, far away from where I am in Connecticut. But we're going to mix and mingle there, and I doubt we'll be masked. Look, CDC and public health, their number one priority is keep you healthy. They're freaking out about two things. One, new strains, new mutations, something might pop up that turns out to be not protected by the vaccine. So that's got them nervous. No proof yet, but they're worried. The other is, even if you're vaccinated, maybe you shed virus. That is, you don't get sick, but you can give it to somebody else. Right. The latter, I think the early data is looking pretty good out of Israel and places like that. I think you get protection against giving the disease. The former, it's a little bit unknown, but, you got to take a risk here. So what I worry about is this, Pete. In being conservative with a country that's been locked up for a year or freaking out about wearing masks for a year or watching their grandmas die for a year, they want some good news. If you just lead off with what you can't do and what you shouldn't do and what you better be cautious about, I think they're not going to get paid attention to. So I'm fine with saying we can meet one another. I'm fine with saying go visit grandma, kind of keep your mask on just in case you could give it to them or they could give it to your kids. but we got to start to message as much about what you can do as what you can't do. Otherwise, I think it's just people aren't going to pay attention.
This one question kind of specific to me, but my dad and I like to share a long kiss on the lips. Is that he's vaccinated, I'm not. What do you say? It's been a year.
Well, I'm going to say handshake. Let's put that custom. Let's hold on that one until Thanksgiving.
Okay, I wanted to spend about 5 more minutes on that bit, but you're too valuable. You're too valuable to joke around with for too long recorded. That's for drinks. Okay, so I want to ask you about the COVID-19 passports. We're hearing this conversation about this in Iceland and in Europe, and I think there needs to be a conversation about this anywhere, state, interstate. What do you think? So
I haven't had as much hate mail since I started to write in defense of animal experimentation or abortion. The past couple of days, I've been talking about passports, the Blaze, the QAnon crowd, what's that crazy, more right-wing TV network that geared up?
OAN, Newsmax?
Yeah, OAN.
Are they coming for you?
They all went after me. It's like they're all going crazy. Like, how dare you suggest that we're going to need a vaccine passport to travel or go somewhere or do anything. So look, first of all, you need a regular passport to go outside the country. You don't just wander in place to place that's already there. Second of all, we've had vaccine passports. That's what we had for yellow fever. There are about 30 countries you can't go in unless you prove you had that vaccine. And we used to have them till we got rid of it for smallpox all over the world. More to the point, what I said was, vaccine passports, meaning you have to show that you were vaccinated, are coming, and they're coming not because of fiends like Joe Biden. They're coming because the private business is going to demand them. If you are a free market guy, like a lot of these libertarian types, I think, are, go tell it to the cruise industry. Go nag the airplane industry. They're the ones who are going to say, you're not getting on this boat until I see a vaccine certificate, because they want to go out to the customers and say it's safe.
I sometimes I have a hard time understanding what people's arguments are without hearing them. And this is one of those cases, but I guess it's this kind of right-wing thinking of being concerned about being a member of a global community versus just the United States, like this anti-New World Order conspiracy stuff.
There's a little bit of the, what was that thing called the Bilderberg group? Bilderberg group,
yeah.
They're running the world. They're going to know who we are. They'll all have us recorded. Anyway, they already have all that because you took Uber or you
have an easy pass,
a credit card. But put that aside. Yeah, there's that. And then there's just one basic thing. Don't tell me what to do.
Right.
Just don't tell me what to do. I don't want to wear a mask. I don't want to distance. You can't make me get a passport. I'm not telling you have to get a passport, buddy. What I'm saying is you want to get on a plane, you want to get on a train, you want to get on a boat, you want to travel to another country, you're going to have a passport. Go right to the HR department at American Airlines. Don't write me.
Every time I think about this whole mask cultural thing, I always think about this joke in my mind always comes in when people say, don't tell me that I have to wear a mask in your store or whatever. I always think of a firefighter saying, don't tell me I have to use the hose. Don't tell me I have to wear the fireproof jacket, or the scuba diver saying, don't tell me I have to take an air tank with me. I mean, they're not perfect analogies because that usually only hurts yourself. And I guess that's what the mask thing is. But my question to you is, sir, you're one of the most respected bioethicists in the world. Where are you on mask burning? Because in Idaho this week, they threw their masks in the fire. What does that signal?
Where I am is I guess they forgot the books.
They're out of books. They burnt them all. But they ironically, the people burning the masks kept the 6 Dr. Seuss books that were controversial. They kept only the way.
How weird is it to have Republicans telling us that we have to read Dr. Seuss? Have they actually ever read his books? He's like a liberal progressive as far, I mean, maybe he's dated because, he's a product of his time, but he's hardly Ayn Rand. I mean, what is going on?
No, I know. You can, the opposite version is more true. I can hear Trump in my mind going, oh, the places you'll go. I'll tell you where you can't go. Okay. You're a Muslim, America. All right. A bizarre story. All right. Lastly, the question, this is a perfect one. I think you shared this on Twitter. In a pandemic, can long-term care employers require vaccination for those who care for the vulnerable older adults? Should they? This question of vaccine requirement for certain types of jobs and memberships and entrances. What do you say?
The shortest answer you're ever going to get out of me. Yesterday. Are you kidding? Of course. Nursing homes, how bad were they? They were so bad that the governor of New York State had to lie about the numbers. It was like a Holocaust in these nursing homes. My own mother died of COVID in a nursing home. You got to get control there. They're not hygienic. They're not safe to begin with. You get any infectious disease, flu, COVID, at least make sure that you vaccinate people to protect the residents. You got to do it.
I value your moral judgment a lot, and I probably would. I can't imagine even challenging it. Usually, if Art Caplan says it, I'm like, yeah, I'll go with him. But so forget about the women accusing Andrew Cuomo. Do you understand what happened in terms of the nursing homes in New York State, and do you think that Andrew Cuomo should have to resign as a result of that alone?
I do. I think those numbers were fudged, and I think he partly worried that maybe Trump would come after him and say you undercounted and that, but you can't lie on those numbers. You just can't. You got a big public health epidemic. You want to know, what do we have to do to make the nursing home safe? And by the way, you may not remember this, but way back then we were trying to figure out, do you send those people from hospitals back to nursing homes? Do you keep them where they are? That became a big policy issue. You needed the numbers. So that bothers me. I
understand why you would. I understand, too, what is interesting.
And by the way, I'm a fan of his. I know he's grumpy, and I can't speak to his lechery. I don't know so much about that. But I think he did a good job trying to message. I haven't been an enemy of his in any way. But, boy, the numbers thing on the nursing homes really does bother me.
Well, I just have a follow-up on that then, because you make a really good point about the fact is, putting the politics aside and putting what that would look like for him, or how Trump might use that against him. If I recall correctly, New York was ground zero because it's a hub of international travel, and there's just so many different, the living situation, the density and so on. We understand why, to some extent, New York was the first and hardest hit. But it also, that means it gives public health experts an opportunity to study how it's spreading and what's happening. And if you don't give the right data, what that means for other localities that are of course going to get it, the rest of the country, the rest of the world, if you don't share your data, then you're the same as China or anywhere else that prevents data from giving out. So it prevents us from saving lives. That's the argument that I'm actually coming to when I hear you.
I agree. I think that's the point. If you don't have accurate data, not only can't you manage your own outbreak, you're slowing down the ability of other places to manage their outbreaks. And the death rates, just to remind everybody, roughly a quarter of the people who died in nursing homes.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Well, great to talk to you. Thank you very much for your insights on all of this. And I will hopefully talk to you again soon, sir. Great to see you.
Right. And let me just end by saying,
please,
folks, who's got the range here? NBA to nursing homes? Come on. What a guest.
Thank you very much, sir. Greatly appreciated. All right. Yeah, okay, I still don't know. I thought about that a lot, and then we hung up quickly. I still don't know what that joke was, and I didn't know how to react, and it was awkward because I love Caplan, and I didn't know what he was saying, but I knew he was joking, and I didn't get it, and I hate not getting jokes. It feels cold and lonely, but I got the rest of what he said. At Arthur Caplan, everybody, on Twitter. Tell him you heard him on the show. Tell him you loved him on the show and you learned things from him on the show and you appreciated that he joined this program because it is a public service that he is giving us out of the generosity of his own time. But also, that's the great thing about this daily podcast, that I get two awesome people on every single day to talk about issues that they know best about, or just to have interesting and thoughtful conversations, including my next guest, who is one of your all-time favorites. I could talk with Barry Redholtz for hours, really. And we do, actually. We talk a lot off the air. I mean, we call each other all the time just to talk about news and personal stuff. I mean, just about anything. He is, of course, the chairman, CEO of Ritholtz Wealth, Redholtzwealth.com. He's the host of the podcast Masters in Business. And he's awesome on Twitter at Redholtz, Redholtz.com. You can get his book as well, Bailout Nation, which is very, very interesting about the bailouts after the economic crash of 2008. And this guy studies. He reads it. He reads so much. He thinks so much about behavior and finance and cars and technology and trends. And I love talking to him. And everybody always loves when we talk. And it's always a great conversation. So here it is right now at Redholtz, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do it. All right, here we go, everybody. Barry Redholtz joining me now from his home. It's just past 3 in the afternoon as Redholtz and I catch up here on the first third of March. Redholtz, everybody. Good to see you.
How's it going, me?
I'm very happy to be here with you chatting about several different things, lots of different things. What do you think is the most important issue? I think it's pretty obvious what the most important issue on our minds to talk about is.
Well, clearly the COVID relief.
No, it's that the banjo player of Mumford & Sons endorsed a book or something by a bad person, and now everybody's outraged, and now the banjo player is taking leave from...
If you've been paying attention to Fox News the past couple of weeks, past couple of days, they don't want to talk about pandemic. They don't want to talk about COVID relief. They want to talk about Dr. Seuss, which, by the way, it was the Seuss estate that said, hey, some of this stuff where we paint people who are Asian yellow and have like incredibly over,
exaggerated.
So,
the drawings are really.
That's them saying we're not pleased with.
Right.
Hey, listen, I had a conversation with somebody who was a legend, and the least racist person you would never guess. But he was, 80 something and blah, blah, blah. Or maybe he was even older. And I asked him about, hey, when you guys were first getting started in the 50s, did you have any competition? And he said something like, well, over at Fidelity, they had this Chinaman running a fund. And I was like, and I kind of eyeballed my engineer, and I said, what was his name? And I'm just making this up. Gerald Tsai. At Fidelity, what was the fund? The Contra Fund. I go, so who's your competition? He goes, well, over at Fidelity, Gerald Tsai was running the Contra Fund. So I kind of led him through this process. And, all I'm thinking of is Grandpa said the N-word. But it's not to his generation. And what we see, and this is the product. So we continue to become more and more enlightened over time. Some of us more enlightened than others, or faster at least. But when we look back at the context of a different era, it's very hard to put yourself into that time period, because things that are truly offensive, sexist, racist, whatever, were just used so casually. Look, I'm still getting used to the fact that real estate has changed. My bedroom and bathroom is no longer called the master bath or the master bedroom. It's now the owner's bedroom.
But have we got more enlightened, or were things acceptable, or the people that were members of those marginalized communities that were drawn and painted that way, did they always knew that certain words were put downs, were condescensions, were there to minimize, to dehumanize them?
So
the bottom line is the Seuss family.
There's a concept in criminal law. There's a concept in criminal law called mens rea, which is mental state. When the person committed this act, was it their intention to engage in criminality, to break the law, or were they just unknowingly happened into something? And, I never. So look, to me, there's a master and a slave cylinder in your braking system. You have a master cylinder, because the master cylinder controls the other cylinders around the four tires, the four brakes in the car. I never for a moment, it would make sense. There's the master and the slave, and you just don't stop to think about the derivation of that, because when you're learning a new thing, and, I kind of grew up with cars, you don't stop to say, hey, is this braking system using the linguistics of oppression and slavery?
Yeah, but you walked right into my point, which is the black mechanic or car head does notice
Maybe this is white privilege, but I mean,
we need a black mechanic in this conversation.
My mother was a real estate agent. I heard the phrase master bedroom,
right?
And the kids' bedrooms. It's hard to find. I get it. So who just got into trouble for? Someone I know who used to work at TD and she's now on her own mentioned today, what's a better phrase for open the kimono? Because that's, an ethnic stereotype. Now, I used to use that phrase all the time. I think
the phrase is pull a Charlie Rose.
Well, no. What the phrase means is you show your secret sauce to somebody who's a potential partner or investor or what have you. Yeah. So she went on Twitter and said, I can't use open the kimono anymore because some people are offended by it. What's a better phrase? And someone suggested reveal your source code, which is a technology. And I'm like, I have to start using reveal your source code. Sure. I don't think open the kimono is offensive. But if someone who is Japanese thinks it's offensive, then who gives a shit what I think? You know what I mean? So I'm not the person whose offense is of issue. It's that particular. So the Washington Redskins, clearly offensive, right? I don't think there's many of us that would argue with that. The Kansas City Chiefs, well, the Chiefs, I'm not offended by the Chiefs. But if the original inhabitants of this country, if the American Indians are offended, then nobody gives a shit what Barry or Pete think about Kansas City Chiefs. If they're offended, then it's their culture. It's about them. They're entitled. So, you and I have had conversations about certain word choices and things you just, grew up with, take for granted. I could see how Grandpa accidentally says something offensive. And it's just when it's a big generational gap, when it's 50 years, easy. When it's the difference between someone who's 20-something and 30-something or 30-something and 40-something, you start to see some interesting shades of gray.
I think it's what you said about enlightenment. Right.
Hey, listen, or how about this? How about making a good faith effort to be a decent human being? Not to go hog wild.
To be decent, to be a decent human being. One measure. I mean, we can unpack that.
It's not being a host on Fox.
No, it is. Depends on the check. It's hard to see my old friend Will Cain become such a monster over there. But
that's how it runs, though.
It's just really challenging for me.
There's no good demons in hell. It's like there's nobody who is like, well, I'm only going to be in the third circle, and I'm not going to torture them that much, and I'm going to try and maintain my integrity here in the fringes of Hades. I'm not deep at the bottom with Satan. I don't believe the world is black and white. I think there are many shades of gray. But in some instances, when your business model is manufacturing outrage, there's no gray.
It's also Megyn Kelly's new. That should be the name of her brand. But she learned it at Fox. There's a book. I just interviewed the author of a book. He's a cultural anthropologist or philosopher guy. It's called The New Honor Code by Grant McCracken. It's very interesting. But you mentioned decency, and I think there's a simple measure that COVID-19 has really revealed for America, but there's other measures as well. How much do you care about other people that you don't know? In America, we're not nearly as good as caring about other people as they are in so many other societies. I think that's one measure of decency. We just don't care as much about people we don't know. Strangers or fellow Americans.
There's kind of like an entire philosophy that says that the nature of capitalism and the nature of competition is such that if we allow people to indulge their own greediness, it essentially is self-interest is what motivates competition, and that's good for the market. But the problem is people just take that too far. Whenever whenever I'm confronted with that sort of stuff, I'm like, so you want to defend capitalism in its modern form or just naked raw capitalism? They're like, no, there should be no regulation. I go, so capitalism, from the people who brought you child labor and slavery comes capitalism. The reason we have regulation is to put guardrails up amongst the worst tendencies of any ideology. Listen, I understand the problems with communism. I understand the problems with socialism. But, having a public library is not a slippery slope to Marxism. But some people seem to think that.
Let's talk about the rescue package and what that means for the economy. Sure. From Paul Krugman to just about every economic analyst and pundit that I read, they are talking about this in a way that it is a once-in-a-generation progressive policy in that it funds all kinds of different interests, sectors, infrastructure, future, energy, and folks who are living on the lower end of the scale. I mean, let's just talk about your overall reaction to this almost $2 trillion package, and you might want to compare it. I'd love to hear you compare it to the stimulus plan or anything else that you wrote about in Bailout Nation.
Well, there's so much stuff to talk about. So first, I'm going to share a chart with you. I feel like you're emailing or something during our interview. No, I don't have all. I just paste you a chart.
Oh, okay.
I had to go pull it up, find it, cut it, paste it.
Got it.
So I can update my email if you like. I got nothing going on.
Please don't. Like, distribution of federal.
I get email late in the day. Do not reply. Invoice from trying. All right, I'll know that. So first off, there are a couple of things that make this rescue plan. This is less a stimulus plan than a rescue plan. There are a number of things that make this rescue plan very, very different than what we've seen in the past. Let's go back to the $2 trillion CARES Act that was passed at the end of March 2020, literally a year ago. And that was a massive stimulus plan when the economy froze because everybody panicked and stayed home, mostly directed by some of the government, but also out of a sense of self-preservation. When it became clear, and I had like a real weird insight. I don't remember if it was late February, early March 2020. My sister was out from the city. We were doing something out on the island. And I said, hey, as long as you're out here, let's go to Target and see what's going on and pick up some stuff. I mean, I go to Target whenever, but you're not out here all that often. And we go through Target, and there is literally no toilet paper, no Lysol, no Purell. No, this was like before the shit really hit the fan. And I don't believe that markets are perfectly efficient, but I have a very vivid recollection saying, hey, there's something going on here that we're not aware of. It's not in the headlines. And literally that Sunday, I said to the entire firm, hey, it's optional if you want to work from home. If you don't want to come into the city, given what's going on with COVID, you can work from home. I think it was like a week or two later when it became, we made it mandatory a week later. And then a week after that, New York City locked down. But, when you see, and look, I know the suburbs, they panic at the first snowflake. And, do you really need 8 quarts of milk and 14 loaves of bread? But that's how suburban supermarkets are. So this was a long time coming, and the $2 trillion CARES Act passed in a panic a month after that, included rescue plans for airlines and massive loans for companies. If you don't lay anybody off for 6 months, we're going to give you this forgivable loan. By the way, my firm took this loan because I didn't want to lay people off and on the possibility that this was going to get a whole lot worse. 2 months later, it was apparently not going to get a whole lot worse. And we ended up repaying the loan with interest. But in March, when we applied, and April, when we got it, I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. I think it would have been irresponsible to not insure the employees, not the partners, but the employees got paid. So there were 250 billion, and then another 250 billion in that. And it was just a massive, the one-time check, the extension of unemployment benefits, the eviction moratorium. It was $2 trillion worth of stimulus that went to the poor, the middle class, and some of the lower upper class. I didn't qualify for that, but my mom, who's retired, got a check, magically showed up in her bank account. This one, the one that literally is passed this week, is very much targeted at the people who are unemployed, have kids, are either working from home or suffering from some decrease in compensation. The child tax credit is massive. This when people are talking about the shift, basically you now have a guaranteed basic income for families with children. That's a huge generational shift. And as we saw with Obamacare, it's very hard to take away a government benefit once people use it and say, oh, I like this. So we've allowed the tax code to become wildly skewed in favor of not just the top 10% or top 1%, but the top 0.1 and 0.01%. So now that the Democrats control all three, House, Senate, and presidency, they're saying, well, we'll talk about tax cuts later, but in the meantime, we're going to set something up that creates a very basic safety net for families with children. The fact that you have children who are homeless, children who are food insecure, we're the wealthiest country in the world. What the hell? I think this is really long. By the way, we're one of the few advanced democracies, strong economies, that doesn't already have something like this. Right.
But it's not permanent. It's temporary. The child.
All these things are 10 years, aren't they?
Well, I mean, the minimum wage would not have been, and that not being included.
I don't know. Is the child thing? Yes. In order to get it into a reconciliation, it has to have a built-in 10-year sunset. P.S. Obamacare comes up in 2 years. So if the Democrats are smart, they'll say, hey, if you like guaranteed health care, and if you like, the elimination of pre-existing conditions as a excuse to drop you from your insurance, well, these guys have been promising you since 2015 that they have a plan. If you haven't figured out that that's bullshit yet, you're not paying attention.
I think
it's literally 6 years later and there's still no plan.
Speaking of the politics of it, I mean, Republicans, what do they have to show for 4 years of Trump in terms of economic policy? A tax cut that went to very wealthy people and
corporations.
And corporations and Democrats now.
And a bunch of Supreme Court and appeal and federal court judges.
Yeah, but I'm talking about just economic policy in terms of what did you do for me? And what the Democrats did is something for the vast majority of the rest of us. And so don't tell me that these two parties are similar when it comes to economic policy. One of them made very little difference and gave money to people who didn't need it and wouldn't spend it. And the other party made a massive difference, a once-in-a-generation difference, and gave money to people who desperately needed it and will spend it probably immediately. Is that fair to say?
So the data is overwhelming. When you give a minimum wage increase, when you give look what happened with the stimulus check last time. That money was spent, I think it was something like half of it was spent within a week. And the rest of it, was spent over time. But it moves through the economy pretty rapidly. And the expectation is, something like $1,400. That's going to be spent in 10 days. So that's a big chunk. I want to say that's like $500 billion of the trillion. So it's a pretty big chunk. That'll definitely be a little stimulative. But keep in mind, I used the phrase K-shaped economy about 8 months ago to describe this recovery because, like the K, you have some people that are going up and other people that are going down. Wait, let's get the K this way and the K that way. So it's tough. This does the mirror image. So you have a big chunk of the economy. Look, if you can work from home, if you don't physically have to be somewhere, if you're a white-collar worker, a knowledge worker, go down the list, I mean, it's no fun being stuck at home, but you're not especially hurting financially. On the other hand, just go through all the industries. If you're a frontline worker, a healthcare worker, anybody in the hospitality, travel, food, beverage, entertainment, there are huge industries that have essentially been shut down. I mean, I don't know who's going to the mall these days. I'm told stores are open. I'm not going to the mall.
My kids go to the mall. I know people go to the mall.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I go to the mall.
Why?
I've been going to the stores. Because I'm not worried about going anywhere with a mask on. As long as everybody else has a mask on. I don't go anywhere. Where I live, and it's always interesting to see images and hear from folks listening and friends all over the country, talking about no one wears a mask. I'm like, I live in New York State. I literally never, ever see someone without a mask, and I have a mask on, so I'm just not worried as long as that's the whole idea of what I was saying earlier about, caring about other people, and everybody's in. You don't have to be as concerned about it.
Right.
Right.
Did you see the mask burning parties in Idaho?
Yeah. Where are you on mask burning?
So here's a good rule of thumb.
Are you pro or con?
By the way, so me, I'm a big picture guy. It doesn't matter. Masks, books, witches. Anytime the townspeople gather to burn shit, there's never a good outcome from that, right? Give me an example where people got together and say, now if a handful of people around the campfire roasting marshmallows, all right, so the Boy Scouts get a pass. But when the townspeople get together to angrily burn stuff, there's no good example.
Does it qualify when my buddies and I were young and drunk and we threw my buddy Josh in the fire?
Right.
We always did stuff.
How's Josh today?
He's doing better. He's got a pretty nice family set up now, but he's still not happy that we duct taped him to a tree and drew a penis on his face.
Right.
But that's what you get for drinking too much when you're in your teens.
Yeah, you don't have to. If you really drank too much, duct tape isn't necessary.
So let's talk about
passed out.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about.
So it sounds like you guys assaulted him.
For sure, I wasn't there for that, and I never drank at all in high school, and that's the reason why. Because I would end up in a box or a trunk.
With a penis on your forehead,
for sure, without a doubt, or maybe one certainly on my face. Okay, so inflation. Now we're talking about the rescue bill, and you're hearing a lot of people say, well, this is going to really set the economy on fire. And I'm talking about GDP growth that could just be really, really high numbers in the next couple of quarters. And so we don't need this money. And number one, and number two, the real negative consequences going to be inflation. But I don't know if this is your phrase or what, but inflationistas is a set of people who are constantly warning, in this case, about inflation, and always wrong. Is that who we got?
Yeah, that's the funny part.
Why does anybody listen to people in your world in economics and finance who are always wrong?
So if you notice the market yesterday and today screaming higher, I think there's a fair argument to be made that for the previous week, the market was a little nervous. I love these after the fact hindsight narratives. The market was nervous that, hey, maybe there's going to be inflation. Maybe the Fed's going to have to raise rates. The inflationistas are a group of people who used to be the adults in the room, sternly warning about, here comes inflation. It's going to be a big problem. That was fair in the 70s, even in the 80s. Inflation hasn't been an issue. In the 2000s, when Greenspan took rates under 2% for 3 years, down to 1% for a year, that kicked off a pretty robust inflationary environment. It was anything priced in dollars or credit. So housing spiraled upwards, and milk and food and energy prices went upwards. And so, I find there's a wrong way crew that is always on the wrong side of the understanding inflation. So when things were going higher and higher in the 2000s, right up until the financial crisis, by the way, nothing like a robust financial crisis to break the back of inflation. But right up until that point, all they were doing was saying, well, we really don't have inflation. Food and energy are volatile. Back that out, and there's not inflation. In fact, in the 2000s, I called that inflation ex-inflation. If you remove everything from the consumer price index basket that's going up in price, well, what's left? There's no inflation. And so that's just one of those things that They were on a particular side of the trade. There's a political component to this, which I'll get to in a minute. So in the 2000s, we had pretty robust inflation, and a lot of the economists, including at the Federal Reserve, did not see it. And they were wrong. We had very robust inflation. Post-financial crisis, when the Fed not only was at 1%, they took rates to zero. They started buying bonds. Right. They did whatever they could to drive rates even lower. Now all these idiots who just missed a decade of inflation are suddenly coming out and saying, oh, here comes inflation, we're in trouble. In a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal, they wrote an open letter. It wasn't an ad, it was an op-ed. An open letter to Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Fed, warning of the collapse of the dollar and the coming in hyperinflation because of your reckless and irresponsible policies trying to save the financial system. And lo and behold, again, they were wrong. They didn't see inflation when it was there. And now when there's no inflation, so keep in mind the impact of the financial crisis was not just a massive...
Of 2008?
08, 09, not only did a ton of people lose their jobs, and I'll show you this chart also, but you ended up with the longest, slowest recovery in jobs, primarily because there was no fiscal stimulus. You ended up looking at a really weak recovery because the way we looked at stuff, here it is, a bifurcated recovery in jobs, a mediocre post-credit crisis recovery. I mean, I could send you a bunch of stuff if you want to share some charts, but typically what we saw was just a really slow, not particularly great recovery. And as the jobs started coming back and the employment levels fell, it was very misleading because you substituted an employment problem for an underemployment problem. And what that means is, so there were no longer people who didn't have jobs. You're down to under 4% unemployment. But technically, if you're an engineer or if you're a senior person and you're making $100,000 or $150,000 a year and you get fired and the only job you can replace that with is a $50,000 or less job a year, you are now underemployed. And so we ended up with all these people who had decent middle-class jobs that post-GFC had mediocre lower-class jobs. We still, here it is, 12 years later, we still have an enormous number of people who were underemployed before the pandemic hit.
Right.
Now the pandemic takes people who are underemployed and, puts them out of work. So the reason this isn't a stimulus plan, the reason this is called a rescue plan, is that there are lots and lots of people who were barely back on their feet since the financial crisis, and then this comes along. You would think 12 years, 11 years later, things would have recovered, but they didn't. And the problem that we ran into back in 2010, 11, 12, the problem is that what we saw in 2010, 11, 12 was all monetary policy, all lowered interest rate. And that's great if you have capital, if you have assets. So if you own real estate, if you own collectible whatever, artwork, if you own stocks and bonds, hey, they all go right through the roof. That's great. But if you are not someone who has piles of capital, if you trade your hours for money, if you work time for cash in that sort of environment, you end up with a very, very different situation. And the recovery was not very good for you. The CARES Act was a good first step towards this. I mean, it was flawed. The first part of it had problems.
This was during the Trump administration that was passed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was, listen, you know what? It was better than I think anyone could reasonably have expected for an administration that has not shown much of an interest in either governing or, there's a lot of lip service was paid to his base. This was one of the few things that to some degree delivered for them, delivered for everybody who was unemployed on the left or the right. It didn't matter. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't perfect. It was pretty, I have to say, it was pretty big. Remember, the Congress literally a month before the lockdown began, literally could not agree on renaming the library. That's how, dysfunctional they are. And they were so scared out of their minds by this that they got together and passed the $2 trillion. Now, as things started to get better, they failed to extend unemployment. They did a lot of dumb things. Just half-assed poor governing. Listen, if you don't believe in government, well, you're probably not going to be very good at it, and that's the problem with that group.
It's my understanding that the bottom line is if there was some kind of disconcerting percentage of inflation, that we have ways that the Federal Reserve has ways to deal with that. So it's just not a concern.
It's worse than that. It's even worse than that. First, the dominant. So I jokingly talk about inflation, right? We have deflation, we have disinflation, we have inflation, we have hyperinflation. There's a whole run of different inflations. The dominant form of price changes for the past 20 years have been deflation. Prices have gone down. Why is that? Well, there's three reasons. First, thanks to automation and robotics, the price of physical goods have come down because it's become much cheaper to make them. Thanks to technology and software, the price of digital goods have come down. Again, it's just much cheaper to scale up. And then thanks to global labor arbitrage and offshoring, the cost of everything else has come down. So whether you're talking about digital goods, physical goods, or manufactured goods anywhere in the world, they continue to get cheaper. And so that deflation is the background. Now, you can give me specific examples. Healthcare cost has run amok. Education costs have gone way up. And lately, housing costs have been an issue like they were in the mid-2000s. But pretty much anything else you can think of, televisions or tools or clothing or toys or, go down the list. Everything is cheaper. Now, do we really need $1,000 supercomputers in our pocket? Is this necessary? No, but you can get a decent smartphone for a couple $100. You don't need the latest and greatest. And so we now have broadband. We didn't have that. We now all have Netflix. We didn't used to have that. So the bottom line is that we're in a deflationary environment with periodic spasms of inflation. So we had that inflation spasm in the 2000s when the first time Greenspan the Fed chief took rates down to 1%. And then we had the great financial crisis, and we have this massive contingent of underemployed people. And that's why even pushing another $2 trillion out into the economy, I just don't see this as causing anything other than a transitory blip of inflation. Maybe it lasts a couple of months, a couple of quarters, but, people are going to use this money for food, for rent, for medicine, for pay their insurance, pay for the electric and gas bills. This isn't like it was in the 90s where people were running around and buying a ton of stuff and sending the prices higher. This isn't too many dollars chasing too few goods. And now the inflationists will point to, well, what about the spot, the increase in lumber prices and the increase in silver and copper? Well, you shut the economy down for 6 months. When you restart it, it's not like flicking on a switch. It takes a while to ramp everything back up. We are in a house that we bought that was sort of a War of the Roses, horrible divorce, that we knew we needed everything. When we first moved in here, we finally, after 7 years, started redoing the kitchen. I ordered a refrigerator in June. It's here, except the door handles, to open the fridge. And when are they going to come? Check next month. All right, so it's March. Hey, so my door handles still not showing up. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? He's like, you are lucky you got your fridge. I have people waiting who ordered it a month after you. They still haven't gotten the refrigerator.
That's supply chain issues due to the pandemic, though.
Supply chain, to build something like a refrigerator, hey, I need metal from here. I need insulation from there. I need this fat material. I need the motor from here. I need the wiring from, like, all these things come together, and we just take it for granted that it works like that. After you shut down for 6 months or whatever, however long we shut down, it was a little longer, a little shorter. Everything is kind of a wacky thing. So, this will eventually show up. So I cleared out a bunch of dead trees earlier this year, and I there was rotting wood that was a wall, so I replaced the wall with just stacked stone is the cheapest way to do it. Mm-hmm. And it looks nice also. So same situation. These pallets of stone show up, and my guy says to me, he goes, I hope we don't need any more stone for this. I go, why? He goes, because I wiped them out, and they said they're not getting any more for another month. Right. I'm like, well, if I have to wait a month for more stone to come in to repair, we're on a hill and there's a retaining wall, and the retaining wall after 40 years rots away. So you have to replace it. So I keep hearing stories about this. So spot prices are going up, lumber prices are going up, fake lumber like Trex.
Yeah. You can't get that stuff here. At least you couldn't a few months ago. Yep. Right. So you could get it and then you can't, and then you can get it again. But that doesn't mean we're entering, and all this nonsense about refrigerator door handles and stone, it doesn't mean that suddenly we're going to have 70s like inflation. It means that we continue to suffer through supply chain driven spot shortages. There will be price increases. They will be temporary because as supply comes online, then the prices will go back. I went to replace a fence that came down in the storm. And the fence guy gives me a quote, and I'm like, gee, that's a little rich. He's like, dude, I can't even get anything. You don't understand. They're backed up for months. If you want fence, I could order it now. It's probably 50% more than it was 3 months ago, and it won't be here in 3 months. Well, for another 3 to 6 months. So that was in October. I'm like, well, what happens if we order it in March? He goes, it'll be half the price, and you can get it whenever you want, whatever color you want. I'm like, all right, let's wait for March. So it's that sort of. So I have a tree that took down a chunk of fence, and I'm like, this is old fence anyway. Let's just replace that whole run of fence. And now it's 6 months later, and the prices are back to normal. We're going to go through that sort of the joys of home ownership. It's just never-ending replacing of stuff that breaks. But we'll go through that as the I love the expression, as the pig moves through the python. As the stimulus moves through the economy, we'll see a whole bunch of things go up and down in prices, but it's not really the sort of circumstances where you have so many Americans. Look, we have 9 million people who are unemployed and probably another 30, 40 million people who are underemployed. That's not a recipe for robust inflation. It just isn't. One more issue that's not necessarily, I don't think a shortage as a result of the pandemic, but of raw materials. But you shared this headline earlier, and I'm really trying to understand this. The race for chip supremacy could reshape the world. Car makers from Tokyo to Detroit are slashing production. PlayStations are getting harder to find in stores. Even aluminum producers warn of a potential downturn ahead. All have one thing in common, Barry: an abrupt and cascading global shortage of semiconductors. What is happening?
So same thing. You shut down a chip fab where people have to go into these clean rooms in what they call bunny suits. Hey, it's not easy to restart that up. It's not like flicking I could mute my mic like on and off. To restart a chip fab is like a 3-month process. And then you have to hope all your suppliers are still there. And then you have to hope they can get you what you need in a timely basis. So again, we'll live through this for a couple of months, and then it'll eventually, I got the dog over here harassing my feet, licking my feet.
I can't see it. It's not as fun.
He's under the desk.
Although I had to think about your feet.
So you're going to end up with, a lot of these sort of spot shortages, and then eventually you'll work through it. And soon enough, these things will be cheap. So if you want stuff done now, you're going to pay up for it. And if you want to buy things and you're more price sensitive, well, you wait 6 months or 3 months. And, the fence, I don't really give a crap, and it's hard to do when the ground is frozen anyway. So, all right, it's a 40-year-old fence. Now it's a 41-year-old fence. I'll replace the fence. The kitchen, on the other hand, the fridge, that had to go.
Let me ask you about the car thing. I mean, we talk about cars a lot. You're a real big enthusiast.
I just bought a new Mustang
of automobile. Did you get the electric one?
No, I had the Mustang for a week, but whenever I want to go buy a car, I just buy myself a toy. And that prevents me from buying
an actual toy. He's holding up an actual toy.
So basically,
Mustang.
That prevents me from doing something stupid. You want to say hi?
So where is the automobile industry right now in terms of production, much less EV production? And where is the market? Because it's pretty exciting what's happening. The announcement, and it all, by the way, is consequential based on the election. Because it was fascinating to see how the automobile industry, led by GM, lobby to deregulate what had been put on them, the CAFE standards by the Obama administration, and get rid of them. And then they came right back as soon as Biden got elected. Like, you know what? Sorry about that. What is happening?
So a couple of things. First, you have the clear leader in electric vehicles as Tesla, not because their cars are so great, and the cars are pretty good. The problem is the build quality. It's pretty mediocre. They're not a great car manufacturer. What they are is a great software platform. So with the Tesla, it's all the software that runs the car that when you interact with it, it's just vastly superior to anything I've played with. It's the network of superchargers. It's the over-the-air software updates, although Volkswagen Audi is now doing that also. It's the autopilot, although I just saw a review of the new Cadillac system. So the autopilot on Tesla, you have to have a hand on the wheel every 30 seconds. It beeps, it buzzes, it flashes, it's pain. Cadillac has a new version that behind the steering wheel is a camera looking at you. And so long as you're looking in the general direction of the road ahead, it will do its autopilot on its own. You don't have to keep tapping the wheel. You don't every 30 seconds get a nag alarm. And by all measures, and it also works off of a satellite map of major roads. Now, it's on highways, it's on secondary roads, but it's not on back roads or small roads. But, you shouldn't be using autopilot in the neighborhood anyway.
Right.
So essentially, if you have to drive 4 hours somewhere, if you have to be on the highway somewhere, it is a really good system. So self-driving cars are coming. I can't tell you the exact date. I'm pretty positive it's less than 20 years. And it's probably more than 20 weeks. But somewhere in that range, you will be able to say, take me to Pete's house and sit in the back and read a book. I mean, you're not that far off from that.
20 years and 20 weeks is quite a...
That's a range, right. So you want to guess? I think 5 years, you have pretty robust self-driving assist. I mean, you already have pretty robust.
Yeah. And
10 years, you pretty much don't need a driver in a car. You can just have the car take you wherever you want. Is that a fair number, 10 years?
I have no idea. I've been hearing about these cars forever. I have no idea. I mean,
but now it exists. Now you have billions of miles of Tesla data on self-driving cars. That's huge.
It seems like the two disruptive technologies are self-driving and electric. And
so electric is actually becoming even more disruptive because Tesla essentially started out with laptop batteries, and the technology has evolved. So the Ford Mustang Mach-E, I had one for a week, a loaner from Ford. I have to tell you, it was really an impressive car. I mean, there are a lot of things that I would change about it, but I think by and large, they did a really nice job. It's very comfortable. I've heard people complain about Teslas aren't the most comfortable. You also have the new VW ID4, which is getting pretty good reviews. After the tax rebate, the VW is like $32,000 for the rear wheel version. The all-wheel drive is a little more. That's incredibly cheap. It's no longer $100,000 or $75,000 to get into a EV, and the VW ID4 is a great transition from an internal combustion driver who's not fully sold on electric, but all right, I'll give this
250 miles.
Yeah,
I just don't understand these people. It's very few people who are driving More
90% of your drives are less than 60 miles.
Round trip. Who's driving? You get wherever you're going, you just charge it back up. I mean, it's
right. That's right. And then the other thing is, I'm of all the car makers out there, the Lucid Air is the one that is most impressive. Their technology seems to be far, far ahead of everybody. 500-mile range, much more efficient battery storage, much more efficient charging, much more efficient power plant, more horsepower from a smaller unit. And the sweet spot seems to be the middle. There's an entry one, which is all range, no power. Then there's a crazy,
but they start at $70,000. It's a beautiful car, though.
So the middle one, but that's where they start. And the prices are all going to come down. Look what happened with the Model 3 and the Model Y that Tesla put out. Those prices have already come down. And VW beat their price target, and you're seeing the same thing with the Ford Mustang. The Mustang starts at $41,000, and that's before the $7,500 tax credit. P.S. Tesla, I believe, has already used all of those individual tax credits. So if you go buy in Tesla today, they no longer qualify for the $7,500 credit. I believe they qualify for the state, because they sold whatever it was, 2 million cars.
Each automobile manufacturer is allotted a certain amount of cars that they get the tax credit for, and then once they sell those out, then it's you got to pay full haul.
So you could get the Ford with the tax credit, you get the VW with the tax credit, you get the Lucid with the tax credit. The middle Lucid, I want to say right now it's projected to be like $86,000. That's not cheap. That's like a BMW 5 Series, nicely optioned. But you have no mechanical engine parts. You have very little maintenance costs, and the cost of ownership and operation are really cheap. That seems to be the sweet spot today for somewhere between power and range.
Right.
On the Mustang, it was about a $56,000 car. But all of these prices, as economies of scale kick in, they're all going to come down. The entry level Lucid is probably going to end up somewhere in the 50s in a few years. And the middle one will probably be, like the BMW used to have a 3 Series, a 5 Series, a 7 Series. They were $35,000, $50,000, and $80,000. So now you have the 2 Series, the 3 Series, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7. Everybody's gotten so niche and so segmented. But what we tend to see with the electric is, the least expensive version, a middle version, and then the high-end performance version. And Tesla has been doing that, and Mustang is doing that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Volvo's, I forgot the name of the Volvo, their electric line, which is Polestar, the Volvo Polestar. Super high-end, $180,000. Same thing with the Porsche Taycan Turbo. $185,000. These are like expensive playthings. The fastest, up until the new Tesla, it was the fastest sedan in the world. And, when you're spending 6 figures on a car, you want build quality.
Who's spending 6 figures on a car? Let me punch them in the face.
All right. So Mercedes sells 500,000 cars in the United States a year. Not all of them are six figures. But a lot.
I mean, look at a car, a Sprinter van, maybe. Unless it's a utility vehicle, you don't get to be my friend if you spend $100,000 on a car. I think it's just too much. It's too much. You have too much money if you're spending $100,000 on a car. So you have too much. Give me some of your money if you have $100,000. I have great ways to spend your money more efficiently than you.
You know what's in my garage.
I know you love cars,
but I won't spend $100,000.
I know that you don't.
I'll let them come off lease, or I'll buy them. Listen, the Audi I bought was I got last year. It was 8 years old. It was half of what it was new. I'm looking at a couple of older 60s cars. Adjusted for inflation, if these cars were $5,000 new, they're $80,000 today, and I'll pay $30,000 for something like that. I'm okay with parking some cash in a car, playing with it for 5 years, and then selling it for what I paid for it. I can live with that.
As long as you give me a ride in them. So.
All right. You love the feeling of the wind in your hair, right?
Yeah.
I mean, your facial hair.
I love the feeling of being outside, period, which is where I have to go.
Like
I have to go.
The weather has.
I have to go help Julia. She's trying out for volleyball.
How's the weather by you now? It's beautiful. Really quite spectacular.
It's beautiful. Here. It's I love this time of year. I love the kind of the arousal of the first quarter, the 3rd of March here. This tease of spring. I think it's fantastic.
I'm with you. March is, and this year spring is the 20th, and I think is daylight savings this weekend.
Yep, pretty sure.
So things are going to be feeling pretty good pretty soon.
We're still alive, and you're getting vaccinated, and I'm going to see my vaccinated parents. All good stuff. All right, buddy.
That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
We actually covered what you wanted to. Yeah. I know I have a tendency to go off.
I like when you ramble. I like to talk to you for hours. People always say, even when we just go all over the place, which we always do, like, I could have kept listening. So thank you as always, my friend.
My pleasure. Anytime, man. Say hi to Val and stay safe.
Done.
We're almost through this crap.
Almost through this crap. There he goes. At Redholtz. Tell him you loved hearing him on the show. Always great. Talk to him at least once a month and a lot more off the air. And go check him out on Twitter at Redholtz and subscribe to his daily reads. They're so good. He's so good at finding. I don't know how he does it. I really don't. Love talking to him. Listen to his podcast, Masters in Business. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have for you. Reminder, in case you didn't hear it before, how could you not have heard it? But sorry, I'm not going to be able to make our weekly hangout, but I'm driving up to my parents in Syracuse and spending the weekend there, and very, very excited to be with mom and dad for the weekend with my daughters, their granddaughters, that they are so excited to see. So that is it. The goal is to keep them off the screens. Please send advice, and thank you very much for tuning in, for downloading, subscribing. Tell your friends about Stand Up with Pete Dominic Daily. Stand Up Daily, everybody. Every weekday, I am here with you. Thank you for joining me on the journey. I love you. You're not alone. Hang out with us and play with us on the Discord platform where folks are chatting anytime, all the time. And I will talk to you tomorrow right here on Stand Up. Now take it away, John Carroll.
When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up on your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. Tis the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand up.
Hello, show enders. Here now, I'd like to share with you the proudest actual moment of my career. My daughter was 14 years old, Ava, and she's a monster fan of all of the Marvel Cinema Universe, the Avengers films. I was having the brothers, the Russo brothers, who are the directors of Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, which my daughter and I are obsessed with, on my SiriusXM program. And so I took Ava out of school, brought her in, and she helped me interview them. And here is a moment from one of my finest hours as a father.
You're really getting some value for your time and for spending 10 years caring about these characters.
All right, back to you, Ava.
I haven't stopped thinking about it since I saw it.
Yeah. We've got nothing done.
Yeah.
Since Sunday. Yeah.
I also wanted to say something about the women in the MCU. Mm-hmm. In every generation before me, women were portrayed as princesses and delicate women that needed to be saved by men. But in my generation, they're portrayed as generals and superheroes. So I want to thank you for contributing to that.
Absolutely. They're ass kickers.
Thank you for mentioning that, because that's always been really important to us as well.
Yeah. So how much thought do you put into having that be a part of your films?
Well,
in MCU?
a lot of thought, because, everyone deserves the right to see themselves represented on screen and identify with characters on screen. And I think that, the thing we're most proud of, even though we don't, run the Marvel Universe, Kevin Feige does, but the thing we're most proud of the Marvel Universe moving forward is how diverse it's becoming. Mm-hmm. And I think it's only going to continue to get more and more diverse. These are global stories. Everyone around the world is reacting. And then, like we said, everyone around the world has a right to see themselves on screen.
Mm-hmm. There's a great question from Ava, and great thing to share with you here on International Women's Month, and a great answer from the Russo brothers. One of my finest moments as a dad. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Goodbye. Talk to you tomorrow.